There is a video that still exists online. A little girl stands in front of a camera, completely unaware that anyone beyond her living room will ever watch her. She is 4 years old. Her name is Bella. She is talking about her favorite pie, lemon meringue. She says it with complete confidence, the way children state facts they believe are permanent. Beside her, her younger sister Celeste, 3 years old, everyone called her Cece, announces that her favorite is birthday cake. Their mother laughs from somewhere off camera. Their father is in the room. The family is whole. That moment is real. That moment existed. And within hours of that footage being recorded, nothing about their world would ever be whole again. This is not a story built on rumor. It is not reconstructed from secondhand accounts or media interpretation. Everything you are about to hear comes directly from official court documents, verified autopsy reports, forensic examination findings, and confirmed investigative records released by the Weld County District Attorney's Office following the conclusion of legal proceedings. The forensic evidence in this case is the last testimony Bella and Celeste Watts ever gave. It deserves to be heard accurately, completely, and in their names. If you are watching this for the first time, and you believe that truth is the only standard that matters when we talk about victims, then you are exactly where you belong. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the DAV Crime Records community. Every case covered on this channel meets the same standard: verified sources, confirmed findings, and complete respect for the people at the center of every story. Now stay with me, because what the forensic record documented in this case is something that years later still has investigators talking. On the morning of August 13, 2018, in Frederick, Colorado, a quiet suburban town in Weld County, approximately 30 miles north of Denver, Shanann Watts arrived home from a business trip to Arizona. She had been traveling for work. She was 34 years old, 15 weeks pregnant, and the mother of 2 daughters. She came through the front door of the family home at 2825 Saratoga Trail in the early hours of the morning. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera captured the timestamp. That footage would later become one of the most critical pieces of evidence in the entire investigation. Shanann Watts was never seen alive again after she walked through that door. By that same morning, Christopher Watts, her husband, the father of her children, an operator for Anadarko Petroleum in Weld County, had loaded his work truck and driven approximately 40 miles to a remote oil field site known as Survey 319. It was a location he knew with complete familiarity. It was part of his regular work rotation. He had unrestricted, routine access to the site. What he brought to that location on August 13, 2018, and what he did when he arrived, is documented in official investigative records and confirmed by his own later confessions. The disappearance was reported that same day. Shanann had missed a scheduled doctor's appointment. Her friend Nico Atkinson, concerned and unable to reach her by phone, contacted the Frederick Police Department and went to the family home herself. Officers responded. Christopher Watts was present. He spoke with police. On the surface, he appeared cooperative. What investigators observed in his demeanor during those initial interactions, and what a behavioral analysis of his statements would later confirm, was a man whose responses did not match the emotional profile of a husband and father in genuine distress. His timeline of events did not hold together under scrutiny, and the neighbor's surveillance footage was already telling a completely different story from the one he was offering. On August 14, 2018, Christopher Watts stood on the front lawn of the family home and gave a television interview to Denver's KMGH-TV. He appealed directly to his wife. He said he wanted his family back. He said he had no idea where Shanann or the girls were. Investigators and behavioral analysts who reviewed that interview noted significant inconsistencies in his affect, his language, and the specific details he chose to include and omit. The public saw a grieving husband. The forensic and investigative teams saw something else entirely. By August 15th, Christopher Watts had submitted to a voluntary polygraph examination. He did not pass. Investigators confronted him with the evidence of his inconsistencies. During the interrogation that followed, he offered a version of events that law enforcement did not accept, a story he would later recant entirely. The investigation shifted. Attention turned to the locations Christopher Watts was known to frequent through his work. And on August 16, 2018, 3 days after Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were reported missing, authorities led a search of Survey 319. What they found at that site closed the missing persons case and confirmed the worst possible outcome. Shanann Watts was recovered from a shallow grave on the property. Bella and Celeste were found inside separate crude oil storage tanks at the same location. The tanks were sealed. They were accessed through narrow openings at the top, 8-inch thief hatches, the industry term for the small port used to measure oil levels inside a storage vessel. 8 inches. That measurement would become one of the most significant forensic details in the entire case. There is something important to understand about forensic autopsy findings before the evidence in this case is presented. Autopsy reports do not speculate. They do not form opinions. They record, with clinical precision, exactly what a body shows and what those findings mean within the established science of forensic pathology. When victims can no longer speak, the forensic record speaks for them. Every injury documented, every biological marker noted, every toxicology result logged, it becomes a permanent part of the official record. In this case, the autopsy reports for Bella and Celeste were conducted by the Weld County Coroner's Office. They were initially sealed at the request of District Attorney Michael Rourke, who argued their release could affect a potential trial. When Christopher Watts entered a guilty plea on November 6, 2018, those reports were released as part of over 2,000 pages of official discovery documents. District Court Judge Marcelo Kopkow, with 17 years on the bench, stated at sentencing that this was the most inhumane crime he had ever encountered in his entire career. That is not a statement a judge with 17 years of experience makes without having read every word of what the science produced. Autopsy report number AW18-156 is the official forensic examination of Bella Marie Watts, 4 years old. The examination was conducted by pathologist Dr. Michael A. Burson at the Weld County Coroner's Office on August 17, 2018, 4 days after the morning she was last seen alive. The external examination documented blunt force trauma to her jaw. Lacerations and contusions were found on the inner lining of her mouth. Trauma was documented to her frenulum, the small band of tissue that connects the upper lip to the gum line. These are markers that forensic pathologists recognize as consistent with a person physically resisting while their airway is being obstructed. Bella's own teeth had left impressions on her tongue. Bite marks were present on the inner surface of her cheeks. Defensive markings were documented on the backs of her hands, her forearms, and the backs of her heels. Visible discoloration was noted on her left shoulder. Post-mortem abrasions were found on her arms, her legs, and her scalp. A laceration was documented on her head. The official autopsy report connects these post-mortem findings directly to her body being forced through the 8-inch thief hatch at the top of a crude oil storage tank at Survey 319. District Attorney Michael Rourke reviewed these findings and stated publicly at sentencing that Bella had fought for her life. She was found inside that tank wearing a pink, pajama-style top printed with hearts and butterflies. Celeste Catherine Watts was 3 years old. Everyone who knew her described the same child, completely fearless, a little girl who ran toward the people she loved with her arms wide open, every single time, without hesitation. The forensic examination of Celeste was conducted alongside her sisters at the Weld County Coroner's Office, following their recovery on August 16th. From the first findings of that examination, one detail stood out immediately against everything documented in Bella's report. There were no visible external injuries, no defensive markings, no signs of a physical struggle recorded on the surface of her body. 2 sisters, 2 examinations, 2 entirely different forensic profiles. The medical examiners understood precisely what that absence meant. Celeste was 3 years old. She was physically overwhelmed before she had the capacity to resist, before her body had the opportunity to leave the kind of physical record her older sister did. The official cause of death recorded in her autopsy report was asphyxiation by smothering. Her toxicology results returned with nothing detected. No sedatives, no substances, nothing. She was fully conscious and completely unmedicated. By every medical measurement available, she was a completely healthy child. She was found in an adjacent oil storage tank at Survey 319, wearing a pink and black top, a diaper, and underwear. Christopher Watts later confirmed in a second confession, given while imprisoned, that her favorite blanket, the one she carried with her everywhere, was used in the commission of her death. When both autopsy reports are read together, the forensic picture they produce is total. No gaps, no medical uncertainty, no alternative explanation available. Both girls showed structurally normal hearts, no underlying conditions, no hidden vulnerabilities, no possibility of a sudden, unexplained medical event. Toxicology for both children returned completely clean. The physical evidence confirmed the digital evidence. The digital evidence confirmed the timeline. The timeline confirmed everything the science had already established independently. The forensic loop was closed, not by argument, not by interpretation, but by science. Both girls were, according to the forensic record, fully conscious and in a completely natural state at the time of their deaths. The cause of death recorded for both Bella and Celeste Watts was asphyxiation by smothering. No ligature marks were found on either child. That finding ruled out any instrument, any cord, any external device. The mechanism was direct, manual, and according to the collective weight of the forensic record, deliberate. That word kept surfacing across every layer of evidence this case produced. Deliberate. This was not an outcome the science could accommodate as accidental. There was no pathway through the documented findings that led to an unintentional conclusion. The evidence described an act that required sustained, focused, and conscious application of force. There is no forensic interpretation available that points anywhere else. When District Attorney Michael Rourke presented these findings at sentencing, there was no jury seated in that courtroom. Christopher Watts had already entered a guilty plea on the 6th of November 2018 because the forensic record gave him no viable alternative. Every version of events he had offered investigators across the days following August 13 collapsed when placed against the documented evidence. The science did not bend to accommodate his accounts. His accounts collapsed under the weight of what the science had already confirmed. On the 19th of November 2018, District Court Judge Marcelo Kopkow sentenced Christopher Watts to 5 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. From the bench, Judge Kopkow stated that this was the most inhumane crime he had encountered in 17 years of judicial service, and that Watts deserved nothing less than the maximum sentence available. No accident, no medical event, no alternative conclusion. The forensic science eliminated every other possibility until only one remained. The autopsy findings did not stand alone. Running alongside every biological and pathological result was a second trail of evidence, physical, digital, and behavioral, that arrived independently at the exact same conclusion. Each strand confirmed the others. Each piece of evidence reinforced what the science had already established. Together, they formed a case that Christopher Watts could not talk his way out of, and could not clean his way out of either. The morning of August 13, 2018, began with a detail so small it might have been overlooked. A neighbor noticed, and later reported to investigators, that Christopher Watts left his home somewhere between 5:15 and 5:30 in the morning. That timing sounds unremarkable until the full context is applied. Watts was known to leave for work before dawn on regular workdays, typically closer to 4 in the morning. That Monday morning, he left noticeably later than his established routine. That deviation was recorded and filed. It fit precisely into the window investigators were constructing around the events inside that house before his truck ever left the driveway. The neighbor's surveillance camera captured something else that morning, something behavioral rather than biological, but no less significant to the investigative record. When Watts pulled his truck out, he had reversed it into the garage beforehand, backing it up directly against the door of the house rather than pulling in forward the way he routinely did. Investigators identified that behavioral shift immediately. Reversing a vehicle into a garage and positioning it flush against the house entry creates a visual barrier between the vehicle and anyone watching from the street. It limits sight lines. It reduces what can be observed from outside. That footage was entered into the official discovery record, and it did not support the account of a man preparing for an ordinary workday. The drive from 2825 Saratoga Trail to Survey 319 covered approximately 39 to 40 miles, a distance documented thoroughly in the discovery materials. Investigators mapped every mile of that route. They cross-referenced it against timestamps from the neighbor's camera, against Watts's own shifting accounts, and against records held by Anadarko Petroleum. Every data point aligned. The mapping placed Christopher Watts at that oil field site during a specific window on the morning of August 13th, with his work truck and everything inside it. The route, the timing, and the destination all confirmed each other without a single gap in the chain. Back at the family home on Saratoga Trail, investigators conducted a thorough forensic sweep of the interior. What they found, and critically, what they did not find, became its own distinct category of evidence. The house was clean, unusually clean for a home whose occupants were said to have left before dawn. The girls' beds were made. The level of tidiness was inconsistent with a family that had departed the house in the early morning hours. Forensic analysis of the laundry room revealed that linens had been recently washed. The absence of biological trace evidence inside that home did not point toward innocence. It pointed toward a deliberate and methodical effort to remove it. What could not be removed was what the forensic teams found in the bed of Watts's work truck. Soil samples collected from the truck bed were submitted for forensic mineralogical analysis. The results identified a soil composition that did not match the earth at 2825 Saratoga Trail. It matched the ground at Survey 319. That microscopic detail, dirt from a specific oil field site that had no legitimate reason to be inside that truck if Watts's account of his morning had been truthful, became one of the most significant pieces of physical evidence in the entire investigation. He had cleaned the house. He had not cleaned the science, and he could not undo the ground he had walked on 40 miles from home. When investigators confronted Watts with the accumulated weight of that evidence, the surveillance footage, the timeline discrepancies, the mineralogical soil analysis, and the autopsy findings, his versions of events shifted, fractured, and then collapsed entirely. On the 6th of November, 2018, he entered a guilty plea to multiple counts of first-degree homicide. The death penalty was removed as part of the plea agreement. On the 19th of November, he was sentenced to 5 life terms without any possibility of parole to be served consecutively. In a later series of prison interviews, Watts gave investigators a detailed account of the events of August 13th. In that account, recorded in the official confession documentation, he described the last words his 4-year-old daughter spoke to him. According to Christopher Watts himself, Bella looked at him and said, "Please, Daddy, don't do to me what you just did to Cece." Those words are drawn from his own recorded confession and are part of the official investigative record. They are the words the entire forensic examination of Bella Marie Watts went on to confirm in clinical, irrefutable detail. She knew. and the science documented what happened next. The Watts case did not close with the sentencing. Its reach extended into the professional world of forensic investigation in ways that continue to be referenced and studied. The recovery operation at Survey 319 was unlike anything the responding forensic teams had previously encountered. Recovering human remains from inside sealed industrial crude oil storage tanks, structures standing 20 feet tall and partially filled with unprocessed crude oil, required a forensic response for which no established prior procedure existed. The oil had to be drained slowly and carefully through filtration systems to ensure that no trace evidence was lost or compromised during extraction. Every layer of material that came through those systems was examined. Every item recovered was logged, photographed, and submitted for analysis. The operation took hours and demanded a level of precision that extended well beyond standard evidence collection protocols. That process was subsequently documented and studied within professional forensic circles. The Survey 319 recovery became a reference point for forensic professionals working in industrial environments, a case study in hazardous material evidence recovery that had simply not existed in that specific form before August 2018. The case required the science to go somewhere it had not formally gone before, and the science rose to meet it. Beyond the procedural legacy, the weight of this case on every professional who worked it extended far past the final court date. Judge Kopkow's statement from the bench was not the language of routine judicial procedure. 17 years on the bench means hundreds of cases, thousands of documented acts of human harm reviewed in clinical and legal detail. For a judge with that history to identify this specific case as the most inhumane he had ever presided over tells you something about what this investigation required of every person professionally obligated to face its full contents. And then there is the number, 8 inches. That was the diameter of the thief hatch at the top of each crude oil storage tank at Survey 319. 8 inches, the width of a standard sheet of paper. The forensic teams who climbed to the top of those 20-foot structures and looked down through those openings understood immediately what that measurement meant within the context of what they were investigating. The official autopsy findings confirmed that the post-mortem abrasions documented on Bella's body were consistent with that specific opening and the force required to pass a body through it. The physical dimensions of the site confirmed that neither child could have entered those tanks by any means other than being placed there deliberately by another person. 8 inches. That single measurement has not left the people who worked this case. It is the detail that makes the full reality of what Christopher Watts did on August 13, 2018, impossible to hold at arm's length. Years after the sentencing, the Watts case is still referenced in forensic and investigative circles, not only for what the evidence produced, but for what the evidence was asked to do, to stand in the place of 2 children who could no longer speak, to carry the truth on their behalf through the official record and into the permanent historical account. The science did exactly that, without flaw, without gap, without any room remaining for an alternative conclusion. Bella Marie Watts was 4 years old. She loved the aquarium. She recorded herself reciting a poem for her father and called him her hero. She said he helped her grow up strong. When August 13th came, the forensic record confirmed that she fought, and the official record ensured the world would know it. Celeste Catherine Watts was 3 years old, completely fearless. A child who ran toward the people she loved with her arms wide open, without hesitation, every single time. The science recorded her as exactly what she was, a completely healthy little girl whose life was taken from her. Their lives exist in the home videos their mother recorded, laughing, eating brownies on the kitchen counter, learning about astronauts, sliding off the furniture, completely and entirely alive. And their final hours are recorded in clinical language, in forensic measurements, in autopsy report number AW18-156, and across the 2,000 pages released by the Weld County District Attorney's Office following the conclusion of legal proceedings. The forensic truth could not bring them back, but it ensured that what happened to them was recorded accurately, permanently, and in their names. That is the only justice forensic science can offer. In this case, it offered all of it. If this documentary stayed with you, if the accuracy, the depth, and the commitment to covering this case with complete respect for Bella and Celeste is something that matters to you, then subscribe to DAV Crime Records right now and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Every single case on this channel is built on verified evidence, confirmed reporting, and one standard only: the truth. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story told properly. And in the comments below, tell me which piece of evidence hit you hardest. Was it the soil samples recovered from the truck bed? The toxicology results that returned completely clean for both girls? The forensic findings from Bella's examination? Or was it that number, 8 inches? Drop your answer below, and tell me where in the world you are watching from. This community is global, and it is built on the belief that these 2 little girls deserved better than what happened to them, and they deserve to have the record told accurately for as long as this channel exists.